wedding invitation had never arrived. Emma stared at the gilded gates of the Whitmore estate, her palms slick against the steering wheel of her borrowed Honda. Through the wrought iron, she could see luxury cars lined up like jewels on black. Velvet, their chrome gleaming under the afternoon sun. Bentleys, Maseratis, vehicles worth more than her yearly salary as a freelance photographer. She didn't belong here. The security guard approached her window, his expression professionally. "Neutral name, please, Emma Chen." Her voice came out smaller than intended. He consulted his tablet, scrolling through what must have been hundreds of names. The silence stretched until Emma's chest felt tight. "I'm sorry, miss. You're not on the guest list." Heat flooded her cheeks. Of course she wasn't. After what happened 3 months ago, after the gallery opening where everything fell apart, why would Blake Harrison want her anywhere near his wedding? There must be some mistake, she said, though they both knew there wasn't. The guards. Expressions softened slightly. "I can call the wedding planner if you'd like." Emma shook her head. She'd already humiliated herself enough. Through the trees, she could glimpse the mansion's white columns and hear the distant sound of a string quartet. Blake was probably already at the altar, waiting for Victoria Ashford, the banking heiress whose engagement photos had graced every society page for months. She put the car in reverse, ready to flee when movement caught her eye. A figure in a midnight blue suit emerged from behind one of the parked cars, walking directly toward her with purposeful strides. Blake Harrison. Even from a distance, she could see the sharp angles of his face, the way his dark hair caught the light. 3 months hadn't dulled the effect he had on her, that magnetic pull that had gotten her into so much trouble before. He reached the gate in long, measured steps and spoke quietly to the security guard. Emma couldn't hear the words, but she saw the guard's posture change, saw him step back with obvious deference. Blake's eyes found hers through the windshield. Those same piercing blue eyes that had haunted her dreams, that had looked at her with such intensity the night everything changed. Now they held something else entirely, something that made her stomach drop. He approached her car, his movements predatory and graceful. When he reached her window, she had no choice but to roll it down. "Hello, Emma?" His voice was exactly as she remembered, low, controlled, with that slight rasp that had once whispered her name in the dark. Now, it felt like ice water in her veins. "I should go," she said. "I shouldn't have come. No." His hand rested on the doorframe effectively. "Trapping her? You shouldn't have." The words hung between them, loaded with 3 months of unfinished business. Behind him, Emma could see wedding guests beginning to gather on the mansion's terrace, their laughter carrying on the breeze. "Then why did you tell them to let me in?" Blake's smile was sharp as a blade. "'Cause I want you to see exactly what you lost." Emma's hands trembled as she parked between a silver Porsche and a vintage Rolls-Royce. Blake had already disappeared back toward the mansion, leaving her alone with the weight of his words and the growing certainty that coming here was the worst decision she'd made since the night she walked away from him. The terrace buzzed with New York's elite. Women in designer gowns that cost more than Emma's rent clustered around champagne fountains, their jewelry catching the golden hour light. Men in perfectly tailored suits discussed mergers and acquisitions. With the casual air of people for whom millions were mere numbers on a page, Emma smoothed her simple black dress, the same one she'd worn to gallery openings when she still had a career worth speaking of. Before Blake, before everything imploded. "Emma Chen." The voice made her freeze. "I wondered if you'd show your face here." Victoria Ashford glided toward her, resplendent in ivory silk that probably cost more than Emma's car. The bride-to-be was everything Emma wasn't. It's tall, blonde, born into the kind of wealth that built wings rather than walls. Her smile was perfectly practiced, a weapon disguised as courtesy. Victoria. Emma forced herself to meet those calculating green eyes. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Victoria's gaze swept over Emma's modest dress, her discount shoes, cataloging every difference between them. "Though I have to admit, I'm surprised Blake invited you. Given your history." The words hit like physical blows. Of course, Victoria knew. In their world, secrets were currency, and Emma's fall from grace had been very public. "Actually," Victoria continued, moving closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I have to thank you." "Thank me?" "If you hadn't broken his trust so completely, he might never have realized what he actually needed." Victoria's smile turned predatory. Stability, loyalty. Someone who understands his world instead of trying to expose it. The reference to Emma's photographs made her stomach clench. The gallery series that was supposed to launch her career had instead destroyed it. Intimate portraits of Blake's world, taken during the 3 months when she'd had access to everything. His penthouse, his private moments, his vulnerability. She'd thought she was creating art. He'd seen it as betrayal. "The wedding starts in 10 minutes, Victoria said, checking a diamond-encrusted watch. "You might want to find a seat in the back. I hear the view is quite good from there." Mel watched Victoria glide away, her train flowing behind her like liquid moonlight. Around them, guests began moving toward the garden where white chairs faced an altar draped in roses and peonies. The string quartet transitioned into something softer, more ceremonial. She should leave. Should walk back to her car and drive away from this world that had chewed her up and spat her out.
But something
Kept her rooted to the spot. Maybe it was masochism. Maybe it was the need to see this through to its inevitable end. Or maybe it was the way Blake looked at her from across the terrace, his expression unreadable, as if he was waiting for something. Emma made her way to the garden, claiming a seat in the very last row. The setting was breathtaking. Sunset painted. The sky in shades of rose and gold, and the gardens stretched toward the Hudson River like something from a fairy tale. Everything was perfect, expensive, exactly what Blake Harrison deserved. The groom took his position at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo. Emma had photographed him in similar settings before, had captured the way he commanded every room he entered. But now, watching him wait for his bride, she saw something different. He looked like a man going to his execution. The music swelled. Guests rose to their feet. Emma held her breath as Victoria appeared at the end of the white runner. Vision in silken diamonds. But Blake wasn't looking at his bride. He was looking directly at Emma, his blue eyes burning across the distance between them, and in that moment she understood why he'd wanted her here. This wasn't about her seeing what she'd lost. This was about him showing her what he was willing to sacrifice. Victoria reached the altar in a cascade of silk and promise, her father's hand steady on her arm as he prepared to give her away. The officiant opened his leather-bound book, his voice carrying across the hushed garden. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Blake Harrison and Victoria Ashford in holy matrimony." Emma should have looked away, should have focused on the roses, the sunset. Anything but the man who had once traced constellations on her bare skin and whispered about futures that now belonged to someone else. But she couldn't stop watching. Him, Blake, stood rigid as marble, his hands clasped behind his back in a posture she recognized. It was how he looked during hostile takeovers. When million-dollar deals hung in the balance, controlled, calculating, completely disconnected from whatever emotions might be churning beneath the surface. Victoria beamed beside him, her smile radiant enough to power the string lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. She was playing her part perfectly, the society bride marrying New York's most eligible bachelor. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Heart hammered against her ribs, her mouth dry as dust. In movies, this was when the music swelled and someone made a dramatic declaration. In real life, it was just an awkward moment before the ceremony continued. The officiant began to move on when Blake's voice cut through the silence. "Do!" A collective gasp rippled through the assembled guests. Victoria's bouquet trembled in her hands, white roses shaking like snow in a storm. The officiant blinked, clearly unprepared for this deviation from the script. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Blake turned to face Victoria, and Emma could see his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his throat worked as he swallowed. Said, "I do. I have a reason why we shouldn't be married." Victoria's face had gone pale beneath her expertly applied makeup. "Hey, Blake, what are you doing? Something I should have done 3 months ago." He took her hands, his voice gentle but carrying, clearly across the garden. "I can't marry you, Victoria. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. The silence was deafening. Emma could hear her own heartbeat, could smell the roses and the faint scent of Blake's cologne carried on the evening breeze. Camera phones were emerging. From designer clutches, society reporters scribbling frantically in notebooks. "You're making a mistake," Victoria whispered, but her voice carried in the stillness. "We're perfect together." "We make sense." "Yes," Blake agreed. "We do make sense. We fit together like pieces of a puzzle designed by committee." But that's not enough anymore. He released her hands and turned, his eyes finding Emma across the sea of shocked faces. The intensity of his gaze hit her like a physical force, pinning her to her chair even as every instinct screamed at her to run. "3 months ago, I thought I'd been betrayed by someone I trusted. I thought those photographs were an invasion of my privacy, a violation of everything we'd built together." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "But I realized something. Tonight, seeing you here, you weren't exposing my world to hurt me. You were showing me who I really was." Emma's eyes burned. Around them, the wedding guests had become an audience to something far more intimate than they'd bargained for. She could see Victoria's father rising from his seat, his face thunderous. Could see Blake's business associates whispering urgently among themselves. "Your photographs showed me a man who was alive," Blake continued, now walking down the aisle toward her. Someone who laughed, who felt things deeply, who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. He stopped directly in front of her. "Ro, I've spent 3 months trying to convince myself I was better off without that man." "Without you?" Emma stood on shaking legs, aware that hundreds of eyes were watching, that this moment would be dissected in gossip columns and society blogs for weeks to come. "Blake, don't." Her voice cracked. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." He held out his hand to her. "I know I'd rather be broken and real with you than perfect and empty with anyone else." Behind him, Victoria stood frozen at the altar, her fairy tale wedding dissolving into scandal and whispers. Emma thought of the career she'd lost, the bridges she'd burned, the way Blake's rejection had nearly destroyed her. She thought of the 3 months of silence, of wondering if she'd been wrong about everything they'd shared, and then she looked into his eyes and saw the man she'd fallen in love with. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, but the person who had let her photograph him sleeping, who had cooked her breakfast in his penthouse kitchen, who had been brave enough to be human with. Her daughter Emma reached out and took his hand. The crowd erupted. Asterisk. Blake's Ferrari roared to life as Emma slipped into the passenger seat, her heart still racing from their escape through the mansion's service entrance. Behind them, the Whitmore estate blazed with lights and chaos, security guards trying to manage the swarm of reporters and photographers who had materialized like vultures sensing carrion. "Are you insane?" Emma's voice came out higher than intended. "You just left Victoria at the altar, in front of 300 people, with cameras." Blake's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as they sped down the estate's private road. "Yes, that's it? Just yes? What else do you want me to say?" He glanced at her, and she saw something wild in his eyes, something she'd never seen before. Not during their most intense arguments, not even during their most passionate nights. "That I'm sorry, I'm not." They reached the main road, and Blake pulled over suddenly, the car skidding slightly on the gravel shoulder, turned off the engine, and in the sudden silence, Emma could hear both of their ragged breathing. "Your phone is buzzing," she said. Blake pulled out his iPhone, the screen lighting up with dozens of missed calls and messages. His business partners, his lawyers, his publicist. The carefully constructed empire of Blake Harrison International was probably in freefall right now. He powered the phone off and tossed it into the back seat. "Hey, Blake." Emma's voice was softer now. "What have you done? I've chosen you." He turned to face her fully, and she could see the moonlight reflecting in his eyes. "Again, finally, I should have done it 3 months ago, instead of letting my pride and my fear destroy everything." "Your fear?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You terrified me, Emma. You saw through all the walls I'd built, all the careful distance I kept between myself and everyone else. Those photographs you took, they showed me someone I'd forgotten existed. Someone who could feel things without calculating the cost." Emma remembered those sessions, the way Blake had gradually relaxed in front of her camera. The shots of him reading in his study, morning light catching the concentration on his face. Him laughing at something she'd said, completely unguarded. The intimate portrait of him sleeping, vulnerable and beautiful. When I saw them displayed in that gallery, Blake continued, all I could think was that you'd made me naked in front of the whole world. That you'd used my trust against me. I never meant for it to feel like that. Emma's throat was tight. I thought you were proud of who you were. I thought you wanted people to see the real you. I did. I do. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. But I'd spent so many years being Blake Harrison's CEO that I'd forgotten Blake Harrison. Human being even existed. You brought him back, and it scared the hell out of me. Through the car windows, Emma could see the lights of the estate in the distance, could imagine the aftermath still unfolding there. Victoria's humiliation, the gossip that would follow, the business deals that might crumble. What about Victoria? She didn't deserve that. Blake's jaw tightened. No, she didn't. But she didn't deserve a husband who was thinking about another woman either. She's better off without me. In your company, your reputation. We'll survive or won't. He lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles. I spent 3 months trying to convince myself that reputation mattered more than happiness. That stability mattered more than love.
No.
The word hung between them, unspoken for so long that hearing it now felt like a revelation. You never said it before, Emma whispered.
Oh.
I was too afraid, too proud, too stupid. Blake's thumb traced. Circles on her palm, the same gesture she remembered from their stolen mornings together. I love you, Emma Chen. I loved you when you were taking pictures of my world. I loved you when I was furious at you for showing it to everyone else. And I love you now, even though I just burned my entire life down for the chance to tell you. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. You can't just decide you love me and expect everything to be fixed. You destroyed me, Blake, when you cut me off. When you had your lawyers threaten the gallery, when you made sure I couldn't work anywhere in the city, you destroyed me, I know. His voice was raw. I know, and I'm sorry, and I'll spend however long it takes making it up to you if you'll let me. Her phone buzzed. Then again, Emma pulled it out to find her screen flooded with notifications. News alerts, missed calls, text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Billionaire leaves. Bride at altar for mystery woman. Read the first headline. We're going to be famous, she said, showing him the screen. Blake looked at the headlines, at the photos already circulating of him walking away from the altar, of Emma taking his hand. His expression didn't change. Are you afraid? Emma studied his face in the moonlight. This man who had just sacrificed everything for her, who was asking her to step into the storm with him. Terrified, she admitted. Good. Blake's smile was real this time, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him all evening. That means it matters. He started the car again, and as they pulled back onto the road, Emma realized they had no destination, no plan, no idea what came next. For the first time in 3 months, that felt like exactly where she wanted to be. 6 months later, Emma adjusted the lighting on her latest photograph. The morning sun streaming through the windows of her new studio in Brooklyn. The space was smaller than her old gallery, rougher around the edges, but it was hers, really hers. Not dependent on anyone else's approval or financial backing. The photo she was working on showed Blake in his penthouse kitchen, flour dusting his expensive shirt as he attempted to make pancakes. His hair was messed up, his expression one of intense concentration mixed with barely controlled frustration. It was completely different from the corporate headshots that usually graced business magazines. It was also the most requested print from her latest exhibition. How much longer are you going to torture that poor image? Blake's voice came from behind her, warm with amusement. It's not torture, it's perfection. Emma didn't turn around, but she smiled when she felt his arms circle her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. Some things can't be rushed. Unlike weddings, especially unlike weddings, she leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest. Those should definitely be rushed, preferably interrupted. Blake laughed, the sound vibrating through both of them. The past 6 months had been a roller coaster of scandal, business restructuring, and learning how to be together without the weight of secrets between them. Blake had lost some investors. gained others who admired his authenticity. Emma had gained a reputation as the photographer bold enough to humanize New York's most untouchable CEO. They'd both gained something more valuable than either had expected. "Victoria got engaged last week," Blake said, scrolling through his phone. "To a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley. The announcement says they're perfectly suited in planning a winter wedding. Good for her," Emma meant it. Victoria deserved someone who looked at her the way Blake looked at Emma, with complete devotion and no reservations. "There's something else." Blake's arms tightened around her slightly. "The Times wants to do a feature on us. Love in the age of social media, or something equally ridiculous. They want to interview us together." Emma considered this. 6 months ago, the idea of more publicity would have terrified her. Now it felt like another step in reclaiming her narrative. "What do you think?" "I think," Blake said, turning her around to face him, "that I'm tired of other people telling our story. Maybe it's time we told it ourselves." He was right.
A gossip.
Columns had painted them as everything from star-crossed lovers to calculating opportunists. None of them had captured the truth, which was simpler and more complicated than any headline could convey. They were two people who had found each other, lost each other, and been brave enough to find each other again. "There's one condition," Emma said, reaching for her camera. "If we're going to tell our story, we do it my way." Blake grinned, recognizing the gleam in her eyes. "You want to photograph the interview? I want to show them who we really are. Not the scandal, not the drama. It's just us." She raised the camera and snapped a picture of him in that moment, his smile genuine and unguarded, the morning light catching the love in his eyes. It was the kind of shot that had gotten her into trouble before, the kind that revealed too much truth for comfort. This time she wasn't afraid of the truth. "I love you," Blake said, the words as natural as breathing now. "I love you too." Emma lowered the camera and kissed him, tasting coffee and promises on his lips. Outside, New York hummed with its usual chaos of ambition and dreams. Inside her studio, surrounded by photographs that told stories of vulnerability and strength, Emma felt something she'd never experienced before. She felt home, so Blake said, against her lips, ready to scandalize New York society again. Emma laughed, picking up her camera and checking the light. Always. She aimed the lens at him one more time, capturing the moment when everything changed. When two people decided that love was worth more than reputation, that truth was worth more than safety, that some stories were worth telling no matter the cost, the shutter clicked. The end asterisk like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.